Hello all and welcome back to another video. I know it's been a while since the last upload, but we've been busy cracking on with projects and building new things. So this video is a bit different. I'm starting by a walk around in this very cool workshop. This is owned by Cliff at Two Wheel Restorations. This is the Honda go-to place. As you can see, it's covered in awesome engines. CR250 here. There's engines from a variety of different bikes all over the place, and he specialises in these bikes. But the video is not about the engines. We're actually coming to look at an engine stand that we have built. So I'm starting this video a bit back to front. I'm going to give you a little taster of the finished item, and then we're going to run through the whole build project. So here it is. This is the engine stand. I built this top part originally, and now in this video we're going to work on building the lower white stand, so a full trolley frame that holds this whole unit. So let's get into it. So guys, that was a bit of a backward start to the video. I thought I'd start by showing you the finished product and what I've been working on. Obviously this is a bit different and hard to capture in one title, so I thought I'd show you what we've been doing, what I've been working on, and then we come back to the workshop side of it, pre-building it, to run through that. So obviously you've seen we're building a stand on big beefy wheels to hold an engine dyno test stand. I built the test stand and didn't film it because it was a bit of a complex long project, but I thought it'd be cool to capture this part of the build. So today obviously you've seen us fitting the engine stand to this frame that allows it to move around, and now I'm going to capture the actual metalwork that went into building this frame. So let's get straight into it. Let's build this beast. With all these projects, what's the first thing you've got to sort? That is the material. So for this stand we're going to be using a couple lengths of box section. We've got two different sizes here in massive lengths because that's the cheapest way to buy it, but we're using 40 by 40 by 2.5mm wall, and we're using a 60 by 40 as well. So this is what's going to make up the base of the stand, and then as mentioned we have got some big old wheels. So these are the Footmaster Pro wheels with the wind down foot, which makes it perfect for heavy duty stands. In usual fashion, what we're going to be building off is a SolidWorks drawing. By drawing, it's very unofficial. I refer to these as reference drawings because all we've really got are the main dimensions that I need to cut the material. So here's pretty much a cutting list. I'm going to throw the 3D model on screen for anyone interested and give a quick talk through that before we get cutting. But first thing is to cut everything, get it on the table, and then we'll think about assembly. So let's take a look around this part slash assembly we are making today. Now I know a lot of people build things as they go along, but I prefer to design it as I have the ability to do that. It just means that I can kind of prove out the design and make sure everything fits before we go too far. But here's a look at the frame. At the top you can see we have the 60 by 40 box. For the legs coming down we've got the 40 by 40, and then we've got some smaller section in between. Down on the bottom we've got these nice Footmaster CAD model casters. Great to be able to drop these in and get an idea of the proportions. That's also one other thing you can check. I can make sure this fits exactly as I want before I go too far, because there's nothing worse than building something and it not fitting. So it's a great tool for that, and hopefully it gives you guys an insight into how I start the majority of my projects. First job on the list is to get all this box section cut up and ready for prep and assembly. I have my standard process of measuring, marking with a scribe, and then just ploughing through it on the bandsaw to get it all sorted. This bandsaw absolutely chomps through this box section, which makes life a load easier. Guys, you've seen it plenty of times before in my other videos. The cutting is very rinse and repeat, so I'm going to get cracking, cut all of the lengths we need for this stand, and then we'll fast forward and I'll get back to you when that's all done. Jumping from the bandsaw to the milling machine, with all this box section cut up, we're now going to put the holes in the lower members which hold the wheels. So we're over on our lovely Bridgeport getting set up, and we've made a small fixture to make sure that our hole falls in the same place every time. And with a nice sharp end mill, we're going to drop some clean holes into this box section. Still getting used to this machine, so excuse us if we're making any small mistakes, but this works a treat and really highlights the strength of a milling machine. Really sturdy, all set up with a nice fixture, and this job is super easy. For anyone who's drilled a hole in box section, you will understand how hard it can be to get a nice clean square hole. As you guys saw, with a bit of mill work on our new Bridgeport mill, we have added some holes to this box section. They are the lower pieces which the wheels will mount to, like that. So that is a good job done. Alongside that, as I mentioned, we've got everything cut and ready to go. So now we're at the point where we can have some fun, we can jig this up and get it tacked together. For the assembly of this frame, I tried to be as logical as possible, starting from the bottom and working my way up. Obviously, you can see we've got the fixture table, an absolute game changer for stuff like this. We're using the 2 table pins as a datum point and then building from the left to the right. I've got my trusty squares and a load of clamps to get this all fixtured up, and I've got myself a small set square with the fixed measurement, which makes getting these offsets from the cross beams to the end nice and easy and super repeatable. With that base all held in place firmly, the MIG gun comes out to tack this thing together. I've made the #1 rookie error and have started tacking in a t-shirt, and I've definitely paid the price for this because my arms were a bit burnt and sore the day after. So definitely don't do this. I should have been wearing my welding jacket, but I just was not thinking. So with the welding, we're literally just putting tacks on at this point. I want to get this whole thing tacked together and check that it works and fits together nicely before we weld anything out. The option to go for MIG welding was for pure ease and speed. I didn't want to spend time cleaning mill scale off. I wanted to whack the amps up and burn right through that and make this process as quick as possible. Now that base is all tacked up, we can move on to the top section. I decided to build the base and the top, so then it made it nice and easy to fixture. I'd have 2 pieces that I could essentially sandwich between with 4 uprights, which makes assembly a whole load easier. With this 60x40, it was a bit more difficult to get everything squared up nicely. I think maybe there was a slight tolerance issue on the bandsaw, but nonetheless it all went together well and we were left with 2 nice solid bits of fabrication. After losing my tape and walking around for 5 minutes, I finally decided to get the other one out the top drawer and give this thing a measure up. All came out nice. I think we had about 2mm out of square, which isn't amazing but isn't awful considering I literally threw this thing together, and for its purpose that is absolutely perfect. Throughout this build, I'm going to keep verifying that my design is going to work, so at this point I thought let's throw the wheels on and just check that this base feels solid. I want to make sure that it's not going to topple over and it's going to work a treat, but it looked good and I was happy of that, so I thought let's move onwards and get the frame sandwiched together with these uprights. Now this can be a tricky job to do because you want these legs to fall dead plumb and you're fighting against maybe your bandsaw cut, bird edges and the seam of the box you're clamping to. But I made a nice fixture and was happy that it would be accurate enough for what I was after. So I kept that welding on, and unfortunately here we lost the microphone, so you're going to miss out on the nice sounds of welding and metal, but you'll have to listen to my voice as I talk through what we do in this next section. As we kept working our way around the frame and doing each leg, I used my small square once again to get those offsets perfect, and then I worked out a nice method for tacking. I actually ended up going for only 2 tacks on each leg, and that was because it allowed some movement still. Positionally I was correct, and then my plumb could be adjusted to mate up with my bottom frame perfectly. So the bottom frame went on the table, and then we pulled this top one on, and with that movement, due to only having 2 tacks, I could then line these up perfectly where I wanted them and get them tacked back in place. At this point it was really starting to look like the final product and starting to come together nicely, so I went round quickly and put my tacks on, and then started to look at the first shelf. So these weren't originally a feature, but I thought let's add some shelves in to really maximise the space. So we've gone for some 20mm box section, and this is going to be a rail that runs around the centre of the frame, and that's going to provide a nice fixing point for a shelf. At this point we were very undecided on shelves, so I left it quite flexible where something could go on top or on the bottom, but with a small hammer and some magnets we get these in place. It's not always easy. You'd almost like a tight fit that you can knock in, but that doesn't always happen. So once we've got that sorted, we now had a nice line level shelf in the middle ready for the next step. So, as you can see guys, we are getting on pretty well. We have gone from the reference SolidWorks drawing, which I showed you earlier, and we've got to this frame here, which is looking pretty good. Next up, I want to get these wheels back on and get the frame on the ground to give me an idea of the height and the feel of it. Obviously, at the start of the video, you saw us assembling the other engine stand on top of this, so I'm chatting into the future now, hoping that it works well, but it should do. Once it's on the ground, I've also got some bosses, which you would have seen at the start of the video, which are going to hold this stand to the other part. So let's get that down and mock it up and test fit it. Unfortunately, I lost the audio in the majority of making this, but hopefully my voiceover covers that. But let's get this down, wheels on, and I'll show you the bosses. So guys, we are back after test fitting this and giving it an initial mock-up, which actually went really well, which is good news. Next up, to finish it off, we're going to add some shelves to it, so you've got an area for storage, and we're also going to panel the sides so they can be used for decals, stickers, that sort of thing. So we've got arrived down there. We've got 2 sheets of 3mm hot rolled steel, just because it's nice and cheap, or I say cheap, cheaper than the cold roll stuff. And we've also got a length of bar, which will be 2 handles for the end. So this is what we're going to get done next. I'm going to throw this on the bandsaw, slice it up, and we're going to do a bit of machining, get this turned up so we've got a nice set of handles. Onto the Myford lathe we go. We have got these blanks cut to length, and we're going to do some small machining processes to tidy them up and get them in a nice condition to go onto the stand. So we start with a quick face of the end. I'm limited by tooling here. Steel is never ideal on a Myford lathe, but we will make it work. So with a quick chamfer added there, we go and drop a centre in the end of this bar, and this will be the start for our hole. Each end of the bar is going to have a thread in it, which will allow it to be bolted to the stand. So I mark a drill bit up and check out the right size for a tap, and then this is going to go straight into the end, and we're going to work our way up to that tape line. It's a slow process drilling steel on a small lathe like this, but it's a great way to do it, and if you didn't have a lathe this would be a very difficult operation. But we stick a chamfer on the end of that hole, and that will just give us a nice lead in for the tap, and we are sorted. So we repeat this twice, and that gives us 2 handles for this frame. Quick polish, and these will be ready to go straight on. Next on the list of things to get smashed out are the pieces of sheet metal for the side plates, the shelves, and all the bits in between. So for this we're going to be using the CNC plasma cutter. Here on screen I'm showing you the setup of the machine. We get the files loaded, and then we set our 0 on the machine. We set a XY 0 and also a Z. With those in place, you hit the run button and the machine cracks on and slices through the steel. Times like this, I'm very thankful to have this bit of equipment in the workshop. takes up a lot of space, but can you imagine the time you'd need to sit there with an angle grinder or a skill saw or whatever you were thinking to cut these out accurately? So it's bang on, and if you look here you get a nice clean finish. It's not fibre laser level of precision, but it's still very good. With those pots cut, we're going to throw a new sheet on the table. This is the number 2 second sheet, and this is going to be for the shelves. So these are slightly more complex, and we have a small notch in the corner of each rectangle, as you can see here. So the machine follows it perfectly and just cuts it out, which is nice and easy for us when it comes to assembly. If you want more content on this plasma cutter, please do let me know. There is so much I could cover, but obviously these videos get a bit long. So drop a comment below if you want to hear more about this machine. So guys, as you can see, that is the beauty of having a CNC table. I know not everyone's got the opportunity to have one of these or access to this, but it emphasises. Imagine trying to cut sheet metal with a grinder or anything like that. It's an absolute pain. So you'll be able to get your parts like that straight off, and your panels are cut. So that's all 4 panels cut, about 15 minutes worth of time, 5 minutes in CAD, and these are ready to go onto the side of the trolley. So a little bit of clean up, I'll talk you through that, and then we'll get these tacked on. Before we get those tacked on, one thing I did want to do was start welding this frame up fully. Now that I had it confirmed dimensionally and the customer or end user was happy with it, I thought let's run some beads and get the majority of the welding done. As I'm going to cover in a minute, there's nothing worse than leaving the welding to the end and then covering all your fresh sheet in splatter. So we're hopefully going to avoid that by getting the majority done now. You can see here close up. We're running these welds in nice and hot. This is not a particularly expensive machine. It's a small inverter MIG. MIG is not my go-to. I'm a TIG welding man, but it's great to have the MIG welder there for jobs like this. Definitely a machine though that needs upgrading at some point. As you guys have just seen, we have fully MIG welded the frame together. I got that done prior to putting the panels on because I thought once I've got big sheet metal, there's more chance of getting splatter and stuff like that on it. I know you can use anti-splatter spray, but that made the most sense to me. Obviously where the fat panels are going, so hence this bottom side, I've left these weld seams gone because there'll be an overlay of the sheet. But you saw us cut that sheet earlier. I'm now going to clean up these areas because I'm planning to TIG weld these sheets on. The reason for that is to keep a really small seam rather than having a big MIG weld seam. I know you can get it nice, but I think it will just look that bit better with a really nice flush seam. So bit of clean up time, clean the sheets, clean the frame and get this jigged up. With all this sheet cut and ready to go, I start by trying to manhandle this absolute unit of a frame around, and then due to the TIG welding we give it a good wipe down. Acetone is my go-to, and that to make sure there's no surface grime or grease or oil or anything like that, because that will ruin the weld instantly. We get the frame back on the table and we use a nice Bessie clamp and start working our way around this middle shelf. Because it is sitting on this nice 20 by 20 box, I can literally work my way around, clamping it as we go and just putting small tacks on. All the load will be vertical, so I'm not too worried about this breaking free, which is nice and easy for me. TIG welding for this sort of job is a bit more time consuming, but as mentioned, we're just going to get a nicer finish and it hides all them big weld edges and it means less cleanup time for me, which is exactly what I want. And for the end, it's a very similar setup, except we're going to go for a load of clamps. Where we've got a slight offset on the end, we need to do some serious clamping, but we get this thing all fixed down and use the variety of clamps to hold it in place. One thing we always say, you can never have too many clamps. I have a massive set and there's still times where I think, wow, I could do with another one or a different style. So well worth keeping a good arsenal of them. Fuck off. It's ridiculous. A fucking beast. So, as you guys have just seen, we've got the panels welded on the side and we've moved it around. This thing is an absolute monster. It is so overkill, it is hilarious. I think this table is going to be circa 50k when it's done, so it's definitely not going anywhere. What we've got to do now is build another add-on shelf here. So you can imagine there'll be the engine cradle on top, an engine sitting here, and what we're going to put on is a small shelf for an oil tray. So the oil can be dropped out of an engine quickly and easily and have somewhere to catch it. So next up, chop some box section of the bandsaw and put together a little shelf, and then we'll tack it into place on this. Now, this was a bit of a last minute modification, but that's alright. These designs change and adapt as you build them. So we're going to use the rest of the 20 by 20 box to make some small brackets that will hold another piece of plate. Really simple, and we just start by cutting that on the bandsaw and then going over to the table and cleaning these all up. And you can see now, this is what needs to be done for TIG welding. So loads of cleaning, which is very time consuming. So that is the reason we didn't use TIG for the rest of the frame. So, since tacking those brackets together, we've now got them onto the frame, and I'm now tacking them to the main body, going around with a TIG welder and just tacking each corner so it's nicely firm and in place before I put the sheet in and the other finishing touches. One of those finishing touches being the brackets to hold the handrails. So we're using the rest of the 3mm steel and cutting out some small tabs which will weld to the frame and also give us a bolt position to bolt the handle to. So we're using the spot feature on the table. As you can see, it drops a little dot which will be perfect for a centre for us to drill out. Then right behind those brackets, we're cutting the final square for that drip tray out of some 2.5, as we actually happen to run out of 3mm. So that's all good. The brackets are there. I give them a quick clean up, and now we're assembling them to these main bodies that we machined earlier. As you can see, that tapped hole's come in dead handy, and that acts as a nice fixing point to hold the handle to the frame. Now, I'm really happy with these. I think they've come out dead nice. Once they're all zinc plated and powder coated, they're going to look really smart. There was a few ways you could have done this, but this seemed like the most efficient in terms of manufacturing and cost. We had a small cost for a bit of bar, and the rest was out of the sheet we already had. But I jigged it up, get it nice and centered, and we put in one each end. So a quick spin of the trolley on its nice wheels, and we line up the other one ready to be tacked in place. At this point, it's a case of running around the frame and buttoning up all these welds. We're going to go around and tack in this sheet. Once again, similar, just putting tacks in every 50 to 100mm just to make sure it's nice and solid and isn't going anywhere. So guys, as you can see, that is the whole stand welded out. Mainly MIG with some TIG, as you saw. Stitch welding a lot of it, because why would you want to weld hundreds of meters of weld? It's just not economical to do it in any way. But the handles are on, looking great. The next stage for me is to roll this outside and get you some more close-ups of the frame, which I may be overlaying now, and then this will go back to the owner for powder coating, and then I will actually possibly have shown you at the start, but I will re-show now us fitting the final stand to the top of it. And here is the beast in all its glory. I have to say, it looks really good in its raw finish. We've got all the features fully welded out, the bosses on top, our shelving, and I have to say it looks great. It's super heavy duty and is going to work perfectly for its function of holding the upper engine stand. It's been a good fun project, a challenging one at times, designing and manufacturing it, but very enjoyable. Sure. And if we shoot back over to the workshop, you can see us here fitting the top stand, all powder coated, covered in vinyl, looking absolutely great. The stand went in a standard gloss white, and we've got a few Honda decals on it, and it's getting screwed together with some fresh bolts. But overall, very happy with it, and so was the final user. I know it's been a while since the last upload. We have been busy behind the scenes. Next up we have got the CT70 engine build coming, and we're actually going to be testing it and running it on this stand. So 2 videos will interlink quite well, and as mentioned, if you guys want to see anything particular, please do let me know and I can make sure I get a video together for you. But until the next one, take it easy, have a good one, and I'll catch you then.